Welcome to Conversations in a Vintage Shop, a podcast from behind my counter between customers. Join me while I sit behind my retail counter and just have a conversation with you, or with myself. While I look out the window, observe what I see, things that are happening in the store today, throughout the week, and just fun little stories that I have from my time as a business owner. This is something that you find interesting, then keep listening, and I appreciate you. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Conversations in a Vintage Shop, a podcast where I bring the conversations I have in my little old vintage shop in Fargo, North Dakota, right to you. And I have to preface this by saying that I forgot to do this on the last episode, but I always like to give the disclaimer that when I record these episodes, I'm recording them in my shop during shop hours. So you will hear noises and music in the background because I'm actively recording during the day. And sometimes in editing, I can lessen that, get rid of it, but it's there. That's part of the ambiance of recording a podcast live during store hours. It's just how it is. But now I give that disclaimer. So today's episode is going to be one that I have been getting more comfortable talking about, and that is the topic of burnout when being a small business owner. And I sound like a broken record, but to keep giving it context, I opened up my shop in 2018. Since then, I've done all of my graphics, e-commerce. I'm the only employee, only figurehead person that you talk to day to day. Anything involved with my shop, I do by myself, with the exception of accounting. I have great accountants. They do that. If they didn't, I would be in holy hell. So burnout just in everyday life from your regular 9-to-5 job is a thing. When you're a small business owner, it is magnified because it directly impacts your day-to-day operations. And it's very important when owning a small business, if you are not fortunate enough to have a lot of funding or investors behind you, you do what you can to make it work and to survive, which means you may not have employees. You may have to do everything yourself. And how do you save all of that energy and not deplete it all at once? So it's extremely, extremely important. But then also as a small business owner, this goes back to, it still feels kind of taboo to talk about it. Mental health in recent years, especially with TikTok, you see people talking about it more and burnout and the effects of it, which is great. But when it comes to having a small business, it does still feel kind of weird when you talk about being burned out, how you're feeling, but you're also working for yourself. You set your own hours. You are your own boss. So it feels weird talking about it and not being able to reconcile the fact that, okay, well, I do work for myself. I can set my own hours. Why am I burned out? And it's because it's your livelihood. It is a job. As much as I love my store and I love what I do, it is a job. It's how I make my money. It's how I can afford to live in this world. And that is a pressure unto itself. And with being a small business owner, a lot of it is small business owners I know and talk to. A lot of them aren't super eager to talk about their struggles, whether it be with their shop or their mental health. It's still something that people don't want to talk about because they feel like it's a failure. And I fall into that category. I sometimes don't like talking about it because I have that internal shame of, well, if I was doing things right or the way that businesses are supposed to run, I wouldn't be burned out. And that's just not true. Burnout's going to happen regardless. So this episode means a lot to me, and I'm hoping it'll help some of you. And I can tell you a little bit about what I've done to live with that. Live with the fact that I'm always going to have some element of being burned out. But what are ways that I can mitigate that and make it a little bit more bearable? So if that is something that you're interested in, keep listening. All right, let's talk about mental health and burnout when owning and running a small business. Now, this is a topic that I've talked about off and on, but to be completely honest, it's always been really hard for me personally to talk about my mental health struggles, especially as it pertains to my business. Growing up, I was always taught that if you have free time, you could be doing something. Oh, you're laying on the couch watching TV? Well, you could be out raking leaves right now. You could be doing your homework. You could be doing XYZ. I was always taught that I had to be doing something, that idle time was wasted time. And that's a very unhealthy mode of thinking that now as an adult and a small business owner has affected me more than it ever has in my entire life. So recently this year, I made the decision to close an extra day during the week. So now I'm closed 2 days out of the week instead of just one. Now, for a lot of you out there, you may think, so what's the big deal? But for me, it's huge. I wanted to make this shop a place where it was accessible because I knew that a lot of my customers have 2 to 3 jobs, that sometimes they can only make it in on Sundays, or sometimes they can only make it in on Tuesdays. And I never wanted anybody to feel like they couldn't have access to my shop. But on that same hand, it made it to where I was always accessible, even at my own peril. And I'll be honest, when I made the decision to close this extra day, I had a horrible panic attack. Chest pains, I get horrible migraines when I have an attack, sweating, my mouth got really dry, my arms started hurting. I almost thought I was having a stroke. But I have been so used to, since 2018 when I first opened this shop, I have worked 6 to 7 days a week. It's only been recently where I've taken Mondays as a day to at least try to relax a bit. But really, I've just been putting all of my appointments on that one day off, like my therapy, dentist, doctor's appointments. But this past year, I've hit the level of burnout to where if I continued the way I was going, there would be no return. And it was a question of, okay, I have 2 choices here. I can change the way I'm doing things to protect my mental health, or I can just close my shop and figure something else out. And the latter is not an option for me. So I had to make that difficult decision. And again, in terms of life, this is not that difficult of a decision, but for me it was. I am a workaholic. I will be the first to admit I have an extremely unhealthy work ethic. I'm always working. In college, I remember my junior year, I had a full semester schedule. I was in class from 8 a.m. until 5:30 at night. And at that time, I was actually holding down 3 jobs. And I had 3 jobs well past when I graduated college in 2011. I was a dishwasher. I worked at a retail boutique. I worked at a women's clinic. I overextended myself because I A, had to pay my way through college, and B, thought, well, this is just what I have to do. I have to work. I just have to keep working. And I'm going to tell you out there, if you're in that same position I am, it doesn't work out for you. You don't gain anything extra. You don't make out with a ton of money to show for it. I still have college debt. I still have struggles paying some of my bills. Life hasn't improved because I sacrificed a lot of time to work a lot. And I've seen articles recently talking about how this generation has been having different attitudes towards working and taking more time to themselves, to travel, to relax. And I was born in 89, and what does that make me, a millennial? I can never keep track of that. And my initial reaction to that is, kids these days. I work so hard. And then you stop yourself and think, but that wasn't right either. Me working so much to the point where during the week as a student, I would get off of class at 5:30, quickly run 2 blocks to my apartment on campus, change, go to my dishwashing job, get off at midnight, come back home, get my homework done, get everything done that I needed, get 3 hours of sleep, and wake up and keep doing it again. And I did that for years. And I did it when I first opened my shop too. I was working 6 days a week. On the one day I had free, and other mornings I had free, I worked freight at a local Victoria's Secret from 5:30 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I would go straight to my shop. So this has been a habit for me for a while, and I know I'm not the only one. And going into 2024, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I start the year with what I want to see and what I think this year is going to be. And this year, I know, for me at least, personally and professionally, is going to be a year of change. Something's got to give. And I'm starting that sooner rather than later. But I really wanted this episode to focus on the fact that there is a lot of shame when you own a small business in admitting that you're tired and that you need a break. And I found one of the biggest reasons for that is something that I admit I had the same belief of until I owned my own business and had to do everything myself. Now, it's a common misconception that when you own a small business, and I know I've thought this way, I've had other people come in and ask me about it, but you have the common belief that if you're a small business owner, you get to set your schedule. If you just want to sit in your shop and do nothing, you don't have to. It's easy. You work for yourself. It's fine. Now, part of that is true. I can set my own schedule. But as I just talked about, that's not always a good thing. But also, for myself as a small business owner, I did not start off with the luxury of getting a small business loan. I was denied for every loan I had, so I didn't have this big safety net behind me to where I could hire employees and function like what I saw normal small business functioning as. As a business, I was a paycheck to paycheck business. I was surviving month to month. And in order to do that, it was just me. I do my social media, I do my website, e-commerce, SEO, graphics, ordering, all of it. And that takes a huge toll. And again, if you are someone that can afford to do that, it's wonderful. But for me, it wasn't something, and it still isn't something that I can do. so easy? No. It's a whole other realm of problems. And to be honest, in today's society, having a small business is not meant for people like me. People that didn't come from money, who don't have a financial support system behind me. And that sucks. That is a hard pill to swallow. And I've seen others younger than me who have this dream, and sometimes they can't even get it off the ground because they can't afford to. And that's devastating. So that, I know, is one of the biggest misconceptions, is that owning a small business is easy. I managed a boutique in my town for years, almost a decade, way before I had my shop. And I was the manager, and I did a lot. I was there all the time. And I thought, the owner is stressed out about this and that, but look at me. I'm getting things done. I'm going home and having a weekend. Yeah, I have to answer phone calls from employees, but this isn't so bad. I could do this. But what I didn't see was what was happening behind the scenes. Having to do payroll, having to do ordering, paying rent, fielding all of these obstacles that employees are shielded by, like we're shielded from. So I have a whole newfound appreciation for the people I worked for prior to opening my own shop. And that's another element of it too. With small businesses, if I have a day where I don't have any sales, not only does the shop not make money, but I don't make money. I don't get any take-home pay from that. So, if you work at a small business or any other 9-to-5 job, even if you have no calls that day, or you have no orders, or you can just sit back and relax, you still know that you're going to get a paycheck. For those of us who are small businesses, that's not the case. We literally have to work for every cent we get and have to make that money appear. And that is very stressful. Again, when you don't have this big backup fund of money, you're hyper aware of your financial situation every single day. And that in itself is exhausting. I mean, just in regular everyday life, trying to figure out how you're going to afford groceries every day, pet food, medical expenses, just necessities to live. That is draining for any person. And then you add on top of it the financial stress of owning a business. It's easy to see how your mental energy just takes a massive, massive hit. And it's hard. It's extremely hard. Now, when I first opened my shop in 2018, because I knew that the way I'd set it up, I would be working 6 to 7 days a week all year. I knew that I had to put something in place that I could at least... Sorry, you might hear a train in the background. Again, I'm filming this during shop hours, and there is a train that is just laying on their horns, which means something. I hope no one's on the tracks. Anyways. But I knew back then I needed to do something to at least protect a little bit of whatever mental energy I had. And so back in 2018, myself and my partner would make yearly trips down to Denver to stay with my great aunt. And down there, I would find and source things for the shop, bring it back, but it was mainly a nice vacation. Drove down there, cut costs by staying with family, didn't eat out, we kept it very minimal. Well, since then, my great aunt has passed away, so we haven't been able to get down there, but I still kept that week off, the first week of January. And this past January 2024, I call it a week, but it was 5 days because I just didn't want to be closed an extra weekend. So I was closed Monday through Friday. So not a week, 5 days. And I found that at the end of that 5 days, it was the first time where I wasn't excited to come back to the shop and come back to work. I had purposely not had any projects at the shop. I stayed home and got things done at home for once. And I felt that it just wasn't enough time. I needed more time. And what I should have done is just sucked it up and closed the entire month of January. There are a fair amount of businesses, especially in the Fargo-Moorhead area, that do that. And sometimes they even close until March. And realistically, I could have probably stayed closed through January. But again, when you're just worried about the money aspect of it, it's hard to justify that. So I begrudgingly came back that weekend. We had a fairly busy weekend for January, and it kind of just reaffirmed that, see, I can't take extra days off, because look I had a steady weekend in January. I could never take all of January off, and so it just solidified that belief that I couldn't take time off. But that was the change. I needed more time, and I didn't give that to myself. And it is really important, but it's also really hard because I don't have the luxury of money. I mean, my partner talk about this all the time, how you hear people say all the time, money can't buy happiness. But what it can provide is a really good therapist and regular therapy sessions that can at least be a start. And that's the damn truth. But that leads me to what has helped me the most. And I said this way back in the very, very first episode when I was diagnosed with ADHD, that therapy has been the reason why my business is still going right now. If I did not have therapy, I mentally would not be equipped to keep this business running. And that was the one steady thing that I've done through the years to take care of myself and invest in. And it's given me more motivation to do what's uncomfortable by letting go of the control of the shop I have. Having to be open X amount of days, having to do this, having to do that. That my shop won't die because I take one extra day off a week. It's actually going to be better for my shop. It's going to be better for me. And really, as a small business owner, the number one thing I can recommend is, if you can afford it, get therapy. Please get therapy. And in therapy, I did learn a lot about a lot of the things I just talked about that contribute to my burnout. But another really big part of why I get so burned out is because when I'm at the shop, I'm here by myself. I'm the only line of defense here. And sometimes, you people a little too hard. You get a lot of people in, a lot of people with different personalities, different needs. And some days it can be even more draining. I had one person who used to come into the shop, but they don't anymore, who would come in and tell me that coming into my shop and talking to me was better than therapy because they could do it for free. And they would sit on my shop couch and just vent and unload on me and then get up and leave. And at the time I thought, okay, well, to be a good business owner, I have to just take it because I want to create a good community. I want people to know that I care. But through therapy, I saw that no, that is a line that's being crossed. That's a boundary that's being crossed because it's your energy you're giving out and not getting anything back from it. You are not a therapist. You work retail. but those of us who've worked in the service industry know that it sometimes does feel like you are a therapist. And how through my therapist telling me that, it kind of woke me up to, oh wow, part of being a business owner really isn't being everything for everybody, because my mental health is important too. And I have a lot of instances, and that's where my episodes about customer stories kind of came about, because I would have a lot of interactions with people that were so draining that if I didn't find the humor in it, I would probably break down and cry. I mean, I've had instances in the shop where I've had people coming in threatening me, yelling at me, and people coming in right after that, seeing what I had gone through, and wouldn't skip a beat and would jump into, oh yeah, that sucks, but I've had a really hard day, so is it okay if I just sit here and tell you all about it? I know you just had that interaction, but I really need support right now. And that happens a lot, and it's exhausting. And so to quote Edna St. Vincent Millay, one of my favorite poets, my candle was rapidly burning at both ends. And so it's this realization that what I'm doing right now is not working for my mental health. And my business will suffer if I don't get my shit together and start taking care of me first. I can't be a great community business if I lose myself in the process. And that has been a very hard lesson to learn. And it's been one that I've really been stubborn in wanting to accept. But I'm putting it out there and taking accountability for the fact that I need help and I need to step back and I need to take time to myself, or this business won't exist. So I think the theme of this next year, and I'll try to do more check-ins about it, is just, this is a year of reworking the plan, reworking the way that I do business in relation to myself, and separating myself from the shop a little bit more every year so that I can protect my well-being. And since 2018, the shop has had so many changes. Started in a tiny little studio space in the basement of the building I'm currently in. About 6 months after that, I upgraded to a slightly larger space, still in the basement. A year after that, the brick and mortar I'm currently in opened, so I moved up here. Pandemic happened. Had to fight to keep going and come up with different things to keep surviving. And it's been that survival mode ever since. And when you're in a constant state of survival, it's hard to see how far you've come, but also what you had to leave behind. And I left behind a lot of my mental health. And the fact that my business is still, knock on wood, here, I do think is also part luck. And I say that because all around the country, not just in the area I live in, you see small businesses announcing their closures every day. And it's only a matter of time. And that's why I've really had to get in the mindset of just trying to take it day by day. And if I want to still continue business and be here. I have to just get serious. But as we know, in 2024 and especially in 2023, people had a really hard time. It's been a hard year on everyone mentally. And I think I think of it as in a retail aspect because my life has been retail for years. You know, the year 2020 during the pandemic and shutdown, we all were so isolated. Once we were able to get out of the shutdown, the rest of that year and the year after that, we all went into overdrive. You wanted to support local businesses. You wanted to be out there. You wanted to buy stuff. Like we had, stimulus money and we had all of these things at our fingertips. And we knew that pendulum was going to swing back at some point, and it has. And 2023 into 2024, we're seeing the repercussions of that. People are exhausted. And I'm not even talking about the economy because that is a whole other topic, but people are exhausted. The last few years have seemed like a decade. And I think people, business owners, workers, employees, everybody's felt it. And I do think this is the year where all of us have to stop and really check in with ourselves and what we're doing, because all of us are mentally on a collision course. If we don't start to recognize the mental space that we've been in. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but just when you feel that something's wrong and something's up with your mental health, ask for help, reach out. Don't be afraid to take time and to step back. Hardest thing I've had to do, but I know it's going to be worth it.